Hello there everyone, Eric Padden once again, and on this video we're going to be discussing the actual supply and demand issues out there in physical silver. And I'd like to remind you that when we're talking about physical silver, we're talking about silver that you can actually hold in your hands, okay? Different than the numbers reflected in the spot price which we see out there, which has a lot of what I call phantom silver built in, and that's silver that is being bought and sold, via ETFs out there, but that doesn't even really truly exist in physical form. And if you're not familiar with what happened with the CFTC and the different hearings that exposed J.P. Morgan and HSBC and some of the big banks and big traders for silver manipulation, recently under oath, it was kind of exposed that silver and gold, like other financial instruments as they put it, things like T-bills and treasury bills and currencies, is traded in multiples of 100 times the underlying physical. And so this exposure has led to silver kind of breaking away from its artificially low manipulated numbers. And I'm sure there's still a lot of attempt at manipulation going on out there by the big banks, because the biggest short positions, they still have over 300 million in short positions. And of course, every time silver goes up, it's costing them millions, even billions of dollars. And I think it's great that they're finally having to pay for all their manipulation and costing all of us. Every time we would invest in gold or silver, they would flood the markets and bring the price down to keep us from ever wanting to invest again. And so I think it's great now that we're actually taking over, and the fundamentals of supply and demand, along with an awareness, and silver becoming more desirable now, not only by people in the United States, but also all around the world. Matter of fact, what I want to focus on this particular video is some of the demand from the developing nations. You hear more and more about India. Often they would give gold away as a gift, at the weddings and so on. And nowadays, because of gold being so expensive, silver has now replaced that and is becoming the most popular thing to give away as wedding gifts when they go through their ceremonies. China is an even bigger factor, because the Chinese now, interestingly enough, if you look at historically, they've been a great supplier of silver, and they've basically over 100 million ounces a year. Just as recent as 2009, they were an exporter of over 100 million ounces of silver. However, things have changed now. In 2010, they went from an exporter of 100 million ounces to a net importer of over 150 million ounces in 2010. And so what that means is that's about 250 million ounces of silver that's simply not available anymore to other investors around the world. Interestingly enough, if you look at the ICBC, the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, they've actually already, in just January of 2011, which was the most recent information I was able to find, in just January of 2011, they've sold over 13 tons of physical silver to their citizens. And you can compare that with just all of 2010, they sold 33 tons. So you're seeing a tremendous, momentum in the people that are putting away physical silver. Interestingly enough, in China, their government is telling them that they need to put away physical silver as an antidote to the falling dollar. Can you believe that? We're supposed to be land of the free, and we're supposed to be all about freedom of information, freedom of press, freedom of speech, and yet we've got this what we consider communist, restrictive government over there telling their people, buy physical silver, put it away, because it's the antidote to the falling dollar. And yet if you watch our media, our people are, hearing all about how the economy's recovering and unemployment's down, and look at your 401k, things are going back up again. Anybody that knows what's really going on knows the only reason that your 401k is going back up again is because of all the trillions and trillions of dollars they're pumping into it. Okay, whenever they create all that money, quantitative easing, bailout programs, whatever, that money has to find somewhere to go. And right now it's finding the stock market. I believe we're in the beginning of what's going to be a huge commodities run. And much like all that excess liquidity has to go somewhere, and so if you remember, it created the dot-com. A lot of people made a lot of money going up. The insiders made a killing, and then the average guy coming in late got slaughtered. Same thing with all that excess liquidity they put in when the real estate bubble was created. A lot of people made a lot of money going up. The insiders, the banks, repackaging loans, high-risk loans as if they were safe, paying off the credit rating agencies to say it was good paper when they knew it was garbage. All the stuff that's now being exposed, they made billions, even trillions of dollars, and of course all the average guys getting in late, lost everything. And so this is now what I believe is the beginning of the big commodities bubble. And I think silver, unlike most of the other commodities that would have a downside on the back end, because of the fundamentals of silver, You might be aware from my other videos, just a quick little snapshot of supply and demand for you. Basically, if you looked at, say, 1950, at that time we had over 10 billion ounces of silver above ground and only about 1 billion ounces of gold. And as a result of gold being hoarded over the years, put away, not really being used up, there's basically as much gold above ground now as there ever was. More because it's being mined and being once again set aside. Silver, on the other hand, because it's been manipulated to stay so low, a lot of people believe part of the reason it's being manipulated to stay low is the elite that kind of pulled the strings on the different economies, the different governments around the world that basically run all the Federal Reserve banks and the debt-based currencies to keep the average citizen as a slave to debt. And I've done other videos and articles on this if you want to educate yourself on it. It's no longer, one of those conspiracy theories that it's a bunch of wackos. It's actually a proven fact. Their manipulation has been exposed in a court of law. Okay, it's no longer a conspiracy theory, it's conspiracy fact. The big banks were manipulating silver to keep it down, not only to keep the confidence up in their, debt-based currency, the dollars and other, euros and other debt-based currencies around the world, but also because if they can destroy silver through industrial use, it keeps it out of the common man's hands. Remember, the elite, for lack of a better term, billionaires that run the governments, trillionaires that run the banking systems and so on, they basically already control the gold. However, silver's always been known as kind of the common man's, metal. And it's easier for them to simply destroy it, get it out of our hands. Because see, to them it doesn't matter who has it. It's not that they have to have it, it's just that they don't want us to have it. Okay? And so what they've been doing is not only keeping the value of silver down to keep the confidence in the fiat currencies up, but also to simply destroy it through industrial uses. They're encouraging more and more and more industrial uses. There's thousands of new patents every year introduced that use silver up. In your clothing, tons and tons and tons of silver every year because it's such a good antibacterial and antimicrobial. Medical uses, solar panels, chips, batteries, tons and tons of different uses, and they want it to be used up like that because then the average person cannot protect their purchasing power. Because historically, whenever these fiat currencies crash, the smart money always finds its way back to precious metals. Now, back to the supply and demand thing. If you look at 1950, we had that 10 billion ounces of silver, billion ounces of gold. Well, fast forward today in 2011, because gold is hoarded away and silver is used up, today we're sitting with over 7 billion ounces of gold above ground and less than 1 billion ounces of silver. Now think about that for a moment. As I make this video today, it still takes 38 ounces of silver to buy 1 ounce of gold. So how can it possibly take 38 ounces of silver to buy 1 ounce of gold when above ground on this planet right now we have 7 billion ounces of gold and less than 1 billion ounces of silver? Gold is being hoarded away and silver is used up as an industrial metal. Matter of fact, about half of the silver purchased last year was used up industrially. A lot of people think that it's by design, that once again the elite want to keep this out of the hands of the common man so that they have no choice but to be a debt slave when they go to this new one world currency that they've got coming. If you don't have precious metals to move into this new currency in a position of strength, and all you've got is a receipt that says I used to have a couple million on my 401k, guess what that couple million is going to be worth? Yeah, just like what happened in Zimbabwe last year. All the wealthy people wiped out. They were all trillionaires in Zimbabwe last year. Isn't that nice? Everybody got to be a trillionaire. Yeah, the thing that sucked about it is $1 trillion wouldn't get you a loaf of bread. That's what happens. It's called hyperinflation. If you don't believe me, look it up. Okay? Look what happened in Germany in the 1920s. You'll find that it's not something that's new. It's at the end of these debt-based currency cycles. They always want to print more and more and more to kind of inflate their way out of the debt. Quick little example. Let's say I owe you $1,000 and I've got $10,000 to my name. Okay? It's going to be kind of tough for me to pay you $1,000 if I've got $10,000 to my name because that's 10% of my assets, 10% of what I own. But what if I've got my little printing press back here and I say, hey, no problem, let me get back to you on that. I go back here, I decide I'm going to print 100,000. Okay, maybe I'm going to print 1,000,000 just because I can. Well, it's a lot easier for me to pay you back that 1,000 when I now have 1,000,000, isn't it? Well, that's what they do. They try and inflate their way out of the debt. Unfortunately, what does that do to everybody else that's holding those same currencies when it cycles through the system? Exactly. Inflation and eventually hyperinflation. So you need to take action, and you need to do it now. Okay? You've already seen the George Soroses and the Buffetts and the Bill Gates and you've seen the billionaires that always are ahead of the game that have already gotten into their physical silver. You've seen the Robert, Kiyosaki's and, the Trumps and the people that are, now getting into the silver game. It's time for you to make your move. You don't want to wait until they're saying on CNN or CNBC, go buy physical silver. And then it's too late. Okay? That's when you're going to get slaughtered. Just like people getting late to the .com got slaughtered. People getting late, to the real estate bubble got slaughtered. But remember, those took years. They took years to build up. We're just in the very beginning of this run up on silver. And the fundamentals I just described to you, in my opinion, mean that silver will not have the dramatic correction on the back end that a lot of the other commodities will. So remember this, historically, without fail, it's not if these debt-based currencies crash, it's simply when. And we're now to the point where we're banging our head up against the interest on the debt. When that happens, if you're a person that is using credit card A, B, and C to pay off, credit card D, and you get this vicious cycle going, what happens when all the money that you make and all the credit cards that you can get your hands on don't pay the interest on the debt? What happens then? You go bankrupt, right? Same thing happens to governments. Same thing happens to currencies. And so this is where we're at. When China says we're not going to buy your T-bonds and your treasury bills anymore to fund your economy, and the Fed says, no problem, we'll just make them ourselves, that's the beginning of the end. Okay, so don't listen to the media. Don't be one of the sheeple, as they like to call you, people that watch the paid-for, media. Be a patriot. Okay, be somebody that is looking out for themselves. Get your paper money converted into real money, physical silver, gold. Even you'll be better off. I just think silver has a lot more of an upside because of those fundamentals that we just discussed. Put some food away because you're going to see food inflation. It's already happening around the world. That inflation that they've exported to China and the Middle East is going to eventually cycle through the system. It's a small interconnected world, and it's going to find its way right back to the U.S. by late summer, into fall, into the winter. So put your money into things that matter while you still have value in your paper money. At the rate that the dollar has been declining, 1% a year since the Federal Reserve was introduced in 1913, 98 years, we've lost 98% of our purchasing power. Well, if that 98-year trend simply continues for 2 more years, right on schedule, we'll have zero purchasing power with the US dollar. Okay? You're already seeing it, the writing's on the wall. Pull your head out of the sand, wake up and smell the coffee. It's time. Okay? Now, I've got businesses where you can have a little bit sit out to you, 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 coins a month if you just want to build a slow, steady collection. Okay, I've done all my research. I found the best companies out there, and ISN Coins Business has the best way to build a residual income and share with other people how to slowly but surely build up their collection. Preservation of wealth. Also, there's a link on my website that shows how you can buy your silver, your gold, your platinum, and your palladium at wholesale rates. So if you're fortunate and you've got a nice little chunk right now, I'm encouraging all my friends and family, anybody that watches my videos, take all your paper that you've got sitting around and convert it into silver while it still holds value. If you would have done this 2 years ago, you would have gone from $12 silver to $40 silver today. If you'd have done it just last year, you would have gone from $20 and $30 silver to $40 silver today. If you don't do it today, you're going to be kicking yourself when we're at $50 silver and eventually $100 silver. And if hyperinflation hits, the sky's the limit, because all that scared money finds its way into precious metals at any price. They just want something to reserve their purchasing power, preserve their purchasing power, because it's evaporating when you're holding paper. Okay, I'm borrowing against my 401k. My wife, physical silver is where it's at. Make your move now. Remember what Benjamin Franklin said: procrastination is the thief of all opportunity. So make your move now while you're thinking about it. Give me a call. Once again, my name is Eric Padden, 858-705-2487. You can give me a call at 858-705-2487, and we can discuss your situation and see what's better for you. To just start a slow, steady collection where at least you're getting something started, and it's kind of a forced savings where we ship you out 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 of these coins each month. Or if you're fortunate and you've got some money, we can start you out with some rolls, even monster boxes, at the absolute lowest wholesale rates you'll find. And if you'd like to jump on my blog at isncoinsbusiness.com, I've got some great articles and videos on there to better educate yourself on what's going on in the world. So once again, thank you very much for your time. Make it a great day. I'll catch up with you on the next video.